All right, guys, welcome. My name is Dr. Utete, and I'm going to be your instructor for multinational finance this semester. This class is kind of interesting in that I'm essentially teaching three different sections at one time. So in this classroom right now, we have the undergrads, which is Think 5510. Then there are also grad students who are in class, which is 6510. And then we also have distant students, which is what the cameras in the back are about. So what that does is it creates a little bit of a complexity when it comes to actually teaching and grading this class. So today what I'm going to do for you is kind of break down how the grades are going to be assigned depending on which section you're in. And also I'm going to educate you on a couple of concepts that we're going to be covering this semester. So we're going to keep it short, but essentially I'm just trying to lay the groundwork for what to expect going forward. Okay. Now, the one important caveat here is that this representation works well, but there's certain elements or assumptions that are underlying it. And those assumptions are that markets that we're dealing with are perfect. So let's think more rigorously about what that means. Okay, so our starting assumption is that markets are frictionless. Who can guess or who can determine what that means? Anyone? No transactions costs, no taxes, right? In other words, no barriers to trade. Okay, there's nothing preventing he and I from exchanging goods in exchange for cash. Right? Okay, assumption number 2, rational investors. All right, who wants to guess what this might mean? We're risk averse. That's good. It's a very good word. Well informed. Okay, what else? What is it that we like as investors who are rational? Absolutely. So what we prefer is more to less. Okay. We like more things as opposed to less things. Pursuing profit, if you want to call it that. Okay, the idea being if you have a car, that's great. If you have 2 cars, that's even better. If you have 2 cars, 3 cars would be even better than that, etc. But it progresses in a very particular way. And what we call that is a concave utility function. Okay, so remember what I said. Utility here measures the enjoyment we derive from having cash, right? Okay, so $100 isn't valuable to you because you like looking at the note. It's because you can turn that $100 into assets that give you enjoyment, things that you like. So if we were to draw a graph of our wealth versus the utility that we get from wealth, U of W, and we were to start off with 0, so we have absolutely nothing, no money, no roof over our heads, nothing. All right, and somebody approaches us and says, look, you're sitting on 0 right now. I'm going to give you $1,000, $1,000. Would you take that money? Absolutely, right? And how much utility would you get from receiving that money? A lot, right? Like you'd love it. Like that completely changes your circumstances. So from 0 to 1,000, your utility slope is very steep, right? Each additional dollar means a lot to you. Let's say we progress a little bit further. And you're sitting on $1 million. Okay, so you have a net worth of $1 million. And I show up and I'm like, here's $1,000. Will you take it? Sure, why not, right? Like, you wouldn't refuse it because you prefer more to less. But how much enjoyment is that going to give you? Not as much, right? It's still going to be upward sloping, but the slope is going to be less. It's going to be like this, maybe.
So basically it's going to reach an apex at some point.
No, we never actually reach a peak. It trends towards a flat line, but we never actually reach it. There is never a level of money where you're going to be like, nah, man, I don't want that. So if we're a billionaire, it's going to be flatter still, but essentially the idea is we have this concave representation. Okay, so again, I've asked you this almost every class, every class period that we've had. This thing here, why does it have value?
People want it.
Why? Why do they want it?
Want it to buy other issues.
Right, to buy assets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what this thing represents is the ability for me to purchase assets right now, but what else does it represent? Why do I feel confident, besides the fact that I live in this country, but why do I feel confident holding this in my bank accounts and not, say, an Argentinian peso instead?
Everybody accepts this note issued by the Federal Reserve, not accept other currencies.
Right, okay, I mean, that's all well and good, but, I mean, let's say I'm not talking about consumption. I'm not saying that I might be in a situation where I necessarily need to spend a currency. I'm just saying I'm looking at this thing here and an equivalent amount of Argentinian pesos, just looking at both of them. Why is it that I probably would prefer this thing given current conditions? Stable, exactly, because this represents a claim to the future productive capacity of the U.S. So I have a belief that between now and 12 months from now, all right, things are going to continue to run the way that they do in this country, and as a result, this, as a claim to that future, has value to me. But in and of itself, that's not enough, okay? I might have a belief that you guys are all going to go out and get great jobs and make all kinds of fantastic things, and because of that, the economy is going to keep on churning, and so this dollar is still going to have value. That's fine. But the second aspect has to be credibility, because ultimately, the Fed has the authority to print these things, right? Okay, so if they double, triple, quadruple production, then all of a sudden, regardless of how hard you guys are working, the increased availability of the currency means it's going to go down in value. All right, so the second aspect has to be the creditworthiness and the credibility of the issuing body. Okay, who had a chance to look at those articles from yesterday? All right, excellent. Who wants to kind of lead us off then? Like, what did you kind of get from both of those items? Just anything. I mean, this is an open forum. Like, what thoughts do you have based on what you read?
Influence about the international trade.
Right, okay, so international trade and international exchange rates are very closely interrelated. What else?
Japan's kind of afraid that if their currency keeps appreciating, that their export market is going to diminish.
Okay, so specifically that's a concern. In other words, if the currency is too strong, then the products that you're producing locally become expensive to foreigners. And so that hurts your competitive advantage in the marketplace. And so what were some of the solutions to that? What were the things they were considering in addressing that?
Cutting prices.
What's that?
Cutting prices.
Cutting prices, and specifically...
Central banks thinking about...
Go ahead, you're on the right...
Central banks thinking about lowering the interest rate to increase the money supply.
Exactly. So there was talk of central bank intervention. Okay, so this is where I want to begin our lecture today, by understanding sort of the fundamental actor in all of this international trade stuff, and that is the central bank. So over here we have what's called a Federal Reserve. All right, but all nations have something that resembles the Fed. We all have central banks. And what are the functions of the central bank? Who can make some guesses as to what they do?
Control the money supply.
Okay, so setting monetary policy, that's a big part of the responsibility. So that is things like money supply, and of course, setting of interest rates. Another thing they do is to monitor currency changes. And the way that came out in the article is the fact that the Japanese central bank is reserving the right to step in to help the yen climb down from its current level. Okay? So it's not just a question of monitoring. If the need arises, they have the right to step in and make the appropriate adjustments so the currency falls more in line with where they want it to be. And the final thing is to monitor capital flows. So ultimately, the central bank is the accountant of everything that comes in and leaves the country. But we're not going to talk too much about this particular aspect because this isn't really a trade class. It's a finance class, so items 1 and 2 are going to be what we're primarily interested in.